And as I walk back into the story of that infamous city, Sodom, and her sister cities, I want to begin by pointing out to you that, first of all, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were slated for destruction long before the angels of God visited with Abraham, and Abraham interceded on behalf of the cities for a period of time anyway. He interceded to a certain degree, and then finally he just kind of gave up. It's interesting because Lot was there, his wife was there, his two daughters were there, his sons-in-law were there, and apparently Abraham had some insight as to their own lifestyle. They couldn't have been too righteous a family, because if they were, it seems like Abraham would have gone down and said, hey, listen, if there's even one righteous. But you'll notice he didn't do that. He knew he couldn't necessarily count on Lot and his family to fulfill the bill either, so he didn't intercede to that level. He just got down to a certain place, that, hey, if there's 10 righteous, will you preserve the city? If there be just 10 righteous. And then finally Abraham quit and said, okay, there's no sense really in my going any further. I don't have any inside information that assures me that there's even enough righteous people there to make a difference. So why even continue this negotiation with God? But I want you to understand today, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were fully slated for destruction before the angels of God and the Lord himself in a human form visited with Abraham, and Abraham interceded on behalf of the cities. They were already slated for destruction, or else Abraham would not have been debating and trying to bargain with God. Why would he have done that if they had not just told him the cities were already slated for destruction? In Genesis 18, verses 20 and 21, the word of the Lord said, then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. So the Lord has already said that the reputation of Sodom and Gomorrah is so hideous and horrible that it has already reached his hearing. Now, Sodom and her sister cities were already slated for destruction. The reputation had reached heaven, and the Lord was on a mission to confirm whether that reputation was factual or overblown. You know, it's interesting that so many people in the church world today, they want to assume that all kinds of evils are true of GLBT people. And yet, how many GLBT people do they actually sit down with? How many people do they actually seek out to talk to and to learn about? How many people do they listen to instead of preaching at, so that they can learn and understand whether or not the reputation that they're preaching is true or false? I've sat down over the years with probably thousands of gay, lesbian people. I've sat down with couples who have been in committed monogamous relationships, some for as long as 40 and 50 years. Many, many, many couples have been together for 25 and 30 years. There was an incident in Brooklyn, New York some time ago. It's been quite a number of years back now, where an older man had died in a fire. He went into a neighbor's house to try to help them because they smelled gas, and he was trying to help them find the source of the gas leak and what was going on, and he was trying to help his neighbors, and the house blew up while he was in it with his neighbors, and this man died. And on television they showed the newswoman interviewing this man's, and the way they worded it was his friend of 60 years. They lived together. They were both unmarried, and they had lived together for 60 years. And this, quote, friend was so much devastated by the death of his partner, his companion, his mate, that he could barely even speak on camera. And I remember watching him and just seeing him say, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? His heart was so broken. My friend, this is not the byproduct of some evil lifestyle. This was two men that cared about one another and loved one another, were committed to one another, had spent a lifetime striving to build a life together and have a life together. And it's a terrible shame when we try to lump people all into one big lump and we don't care whether we're telling the truth or telling a lie. And I'm going to tell you something. Even God, according to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, even God did not merely accept hearsay, but he went himself to find the truth. I dare and I challenge you today to seek out people. Don't seek people who were miserable in the, quote, gay lifestyle and who came to your church and are striving to suppress their sexuality and live as a straight person. No, no, no. I got news for you. I can introduce you to dozens of straight people who, as single people, are miserable and depressed and despondent and tired of the dating scene and tired of being alone and tired, it's when we want to find information that supports what we want to believe, then we go talk to the people who are miserable and who are sad and who are lonely and who are depressed. But why don't you go and speak to some of those people, and there are so many, who have healthy, long-term, committed relationships, who are spiritually healthy, who are in emotionally healthy condition. And why don't you go speak to those people and find out what the truth is? God did. God sought for himself to know the truth. And I encourage you today to follow his example. Now listen, in Genesis 19, beginning at verse 1 through verse 3, and there came two angels to Sodom at even, during the evening, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground, and he said, behold now, my lords, I pray, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, nay, but we will abide in the streets all night. And he pressed upon them greatly. And they turned in unto him, and entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. As the story begins in the 19th chapter of Genesis, the two angels had made their way from Abraham's dwelling in Mamre to the gates of Sodom, as this great city is about to shut itself up for the night. It was common practice in ancient times for the gates of every great city to be closed at night and locked up tight to prevent any attack during the hours of darkness by any enemies that they might have. It was also the practice of the people of Sodom, and when I say people, I mean male and female, to engage in some very rough and perverse sexual play once their city was shut up securely. Unfortunately, it was not very wise for travelers to stay in the streets overnight, as was the custom in that day. You see, in that time, it was very common, especially if you were a merchant and you were traveling from city to city with your goods. At night, you would lay your camel down or lay your donkey down or whatever animal you might have. And then you would just kind of make yourself a pallet and you'd lie down, maybe build a fire, and you'd go to sleep. And in most instances, in most cities, you'd be relatively safe and you wouldn't have to fear harm. But in the city of Sodom, that was not the wisest thing you could do, because these people had some very unusual, very perverse practices which you'll find here after a little while, mainly had to do with their religious beliefs and their religious practice. So Lot met these strangers at the gate as they entered the city. This implies to us that he was far more than just a casual observer in the city of Sodom, but rather that he was someone who was very much involved in commerce. He was someone who very possibly had his own business. He was somebody who was involved